originals, so maybe we can pick that sometime. How are you doing?
I was muted and you were not. So let me try that again. Welcome, welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for another one of our, I'm going to call them dire chats or maybe dire discussions, our random Tuesdays and Thursday shows where we just talk about one or two important or funny topics that are going on that week. And as always, my co-host, for the first time, I swear, I'm introducing Fox.
Hello, hello. Hi, everybody, for the second time. I'm not just talking to myself, although maybe I am.
He might just be that crazy. That's a good reason not to screw with him.
It is
In any case, we have a few topics, but before we get into the actual topics, I want to go over something funny that Foxlot brought up.
dire,
Yep.
dire self-censored.
Yeah. I thought you couldn't bear to hear my voice. It's so terrible.
Yes.
Look at this. This is hysterical. This is in Germany. This is a theme park ride. It says, we didn't notice the gondolas are in the form of a swastika, more specifically two swastikas. It wasn't obvious from the manufacturer's sketches. How could you be making this ride and not realize it's two swastikas spinning around?
I I think you scrolled down there. There's some pretty awesome responses there. I like the let's see here. Yeah, that first one.
Oop, that's sweet.
Uh, yeah, just scroll down. There you go.
It's
The
hilarious.
hilarious. We got the Holo coaster. That's a bad one. Then we got the here's another amusement ride which looks like the flag of a brutal dictatorship, and that would be the EU.
Yep, yep. Fair enough.
Nice. Let's see here. We got the theme park owner must be furious.
So, I mean, this shaped ride isn't like. Okay, if someone made this in America, I wouldn't assume that they made this shape because of hatred or because they loved Nazis. You know, I wouldn't assume that. I might notice it eventually and think, that's kind of funny. They're swastikas. But probably was unintentional and not a big deal. But in Germany, where everyone's super freaking sensitive to anything that could possibly even be like adjacent to Nazism, I'm surprised this got by the entire construction process, the planning
It's
process.
it's das obvious.
It's very funny.
Maybe we're looking at this a little bit wrong. Maybe it's a good thing that it took so long for somebody to notice. Maybe that is a good indication of how far we've come since the events of that time in our history, and now we can just it just has gone back to being a shape. Obviously the ideology, that's still a problem. But the swastika itself, maybe going back to a shape is not the worst thing in the world.
Though I did have a really great advertisements for this ride. I don't know if you saw them. They said that your third ride would last for 1,000 years.
So, sounds all right.
Yeah.
And demonetized.
And my YouTube account is gone.
Yes. Even D. That was too much for D Live.
It just imploded. Sorry, audience. So, how about you introduce our actual real story, first real story?
All all right. So tonight we are going to do a little bit of a comparative study between two different major protests that have been going on last weekend, and some of them are a little bit ongoing. So the two protests we're going to look at are Antifa and their protests that they had in Portland, and just kind of their protests that they have more generally, and then the protests that are going on in Hong Kong. We're going to explore what is it that they're looking to accomplish? How are they trying to accomplish that? And who are they fighting against? I think doing this little comparative study between Antifa and the Hong Kong protesters will be very enlightening, I believe. Would that be the correct term?
I agree.
So,
It's
so
a
if
nice
you advance,
contrast between the two.
yeah. So we got two pictures there. Just yeah, there was Antifa on the left there. Obviously, they kind of look like they're the ones who would be harassing other protesters, right? And then on the right there, we got a one of the Hong Kong protesters, and she do not worry, her eye is not actually bloody, but a lot of the protesters have been putting bloody eye patches on because one protester did actually lose an eye to a rubber bullet that the police were firing. And there's been a lot of issues with the police firing the rubber bullets not at the ground like what they're supposed to be shooting them at, but more shooting them at level, which you're not supposed to do that with rubber bullets, or you risk losing an eye.
Yeah.
So just to kind of contrast, what do these two protesters just look like visually? Pictures say 1,000 words, and I think that those two pictures are pretty telling about what kind of people are in each protest.
Yeah, I mean, with Antifa, you have people who are just trying to go and go on a march, wave their American flags, and protest, wanting to have their ability to speak, have their freedom of speech. And whereas Antifa is going there intentionally to assault them and stop them from being able to protest and use their First Amendment rights. Right?
Yeah. So
They're
if you advance the slide, we'll actually see what
yeah,
their demands are. We start running through those.
yeah,
So what do they want? So Daira, you wanna read the Antifa ones? I'll read off the
sure.
Hong Kong ones. We'll just go back and forth.
So Antifa wants to dismantle freedom of speech.
Hong Kong would like to preserve freedom of speech.
Antifa would like to dismantle freedom of the press. They keep out journalists.
Like to beat them up too.
Yep.
Hong Kong would like to preserve freedom of the press, and that's something that they're really struggling with right now is getting the press to accurately report on them. They've got a lot of issues with Chinese press in China and Chinese press internationally that is owned and influenced by Beijing, pumping out propaganda. There was actually a pretty big scandal over the weekend. China bought a just massive amount of Facebook ads that were showing the Hong Kong protesters in an unfavorable light and smearing what their actual demands were. And it's actually kind of interesting because Facebook isn't in China, so the only reason for China to buy ads would be to influence the international community because their people would never see them, which is
Well,
kind
because
of
the protesters in Hong Kong are making appeals to America because they want American-style freedoms, Western-style freedoms, and so that's why they're holding our flag, singing our anthem. They want our support, and China wants to squash that support through lies. Antifa wants to dismantle artistic freedoms. They want to tell you what you can draw, what you can say.
what's funny.
Yeah.
Um, And Hong Kong wants the opposite. Obviously, they're looking to preserve artistic freedoms. There's a lot of protest art right now going around that would definitely not be allowed in China. That
Yeah.
would be a major problem. They've actually even before these riots have started happening or these protests started happening in Hong Kong, they've had a few instances of writers and journalists being quote unquote somehow captured by China even before this extradition deal was being attempted. And so if China was doing that before, there's certainly every reason to expect that they would do that after.
Yeah. So Antifa wants to criminalize the wrong opinions, criminalize the wrong way of dressing, wrong way of doing your hair, wrong drawings. They want to control. They are the authoritarians trying to impose their will upon you, and including your artistic freedoms. They also want to dismantle your freedom of religion, ironically, but they want to make it so you can't practice a religion or practice your religion in the way unless that they disagree with.
And so an example of that would be, I don't think the most recent protest was against Patriot Prayer, but the one last month was. And so you have these prayer groups that they think that these prayer groups are just out there holding slave auctions, but they're out there actually Patriot Prayer. They're kind of doing what they said they're doing in their name. Antifa's going after them, and kind of just the Antifa's kind of this is kind of the militant arm of the left, and the left in general has been going after obviously Christianity for a long time, Catholicism, and quite clearly very recently is Judaism. They seem to like Islam though.
Yeah, they're totally opposed to someone who says, "Oh, I believe in the sanctity of life, so I'm a pro-life person." And they're like, "Oh, you must hate women." Like, no, I actually am a woman. I support life. They'll attack someone who is pro-life and call them a Nazi and a misogynist, but then they're totally pro the jihadi types that don't give any freedom to women at all.
That sounds like liberty to me. I don't know. Maybe we're wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. They encourage. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Antifa encourages discrimination against historic majorities.
Yes. And so that's them going after white reparations, that kind of thing. Very against the quote unquote straight cis white male. Even going so far as to discuss things like conversion therapy for straights. You guys need to anybody who's straight out there, you guys got to get some conversion therapy so that you're okay with a biologically female penis in your face. That's what they would like to see. On the flip side,
it's got to be just as offensive as trying to tell a gay person that they should get conversion therapy to be straight.
I would imagine it's exactly the exact same thing. On the Hong Kong side of things, obviously they want to preserve religion. They're very, very diverse religiously over there, including many religions that China simply does not tolerate, like including Islam, but also Christianity, Buddhism, and is it? Buddhism. I already said that. And then they would also like to prevent discrimination against anyone, as we were just saying. Religion's part of that. Orientation. Gender equality, that sort of stuff. That's just not something that really China has. They like to pretend that they are, but they're really not. And a lot of those liberties are very much at risk right now if China was to get their way with Hong Kong. And as we were just talking about with Antifa, their idea of quote unquote equality is to flip that discrimination and make sure that anybody who used to be in the majority is now the underclass and underneath their boot, which is not equality, and that's not anti-discrimination.
Yeah. So Antifa wants to dismantle capitalism that has created such a high standard of living. The best quality of life in any country in America is because of capitalism. And they want to dismantle that and replace it with a system that has failed everywhere it has been tried.
Yep. And Hong Kong is very, very capitalist. They got that from back when they were an owned English colony, which you guys may remember us discussing the Hong Kong story about 2 weeks ago. We kind of did some of the basic primer on how all that works. But just to recap real quick, Hong Kong up until the 90s had been a British-owned colony for 100 years. And then Britain was forced to give it up to China. But China was told that it had to let Hong Kong kind of keep doing what it was doing. And during the time that it was under British rule, it had become a major port city, extremely, extremely high economic throughput, very valuable land, a lot of business people there. It's a big economic powerhouse, and they're looking to preserve that. They're looking to preserve private businesses, being able to own stuff like that, and not just having the government come in and nationalize it and socialize it, because Well, as we can see, the next line is Antifa is looking to encourage communism, which has always resulted in mass death, and Hong Kong would like to prevent that. They've seen the results of communism in their neighbor China. That's been a pretty terrible 100 years for China under communism. A lot of people died. A lot of people starved to death. A lot of people are just murdered outright because that's how communism works.
Yep. They also want to dismantle borders. Antifa wants to make it so that anyone can come across our border freely without being, known and not being vetted.
Yeah, that's part of their chance is no USA at all is one of their chants that they've got, and that's kind of in general they would like to see just complete free movement across all borders because they think that's racist for whatever reason. Whereas Hong Kong right now, their borders are very much under threat. They are looking very much to preserve their political autonomy, and political autonomy comes from having borders, a separation between you and someone else.
Imagine the hubris of these Antifa types that these wealthy middle class kids that only have the ability to go out and protest like they are, to be revolutionaries like they are, because of the quality of life provide to them through capitalism and a strong country with borders, and their intent on destroying the freedoms and the security that allows them to do what they are doing. It is ironic.
Yes, it's that brings us to their final one. You gonna finish that out?
Yeah, they want to dismantle Western culture in general.
Oh,
They've been taught to hate America and everything America stands for, even though, which I'm assuming means they've never traveled anywhere around the world, because they would realize immediately that America is, in many ways, a lot better a place to live than anywhere else.
it really is. Even just traveling around America. Yeah, I was just on a nice trip to Florida this weekend, and I got to experience a different part of America than what I've got in my current location. And we all commented on really, really how beautiful the coast was. Yeah, certainly the Florida coast. Maybe not so much in California, but I guess it depends on who's taking care of it. But it was very diverse landscape there. It was a completely different area, but still very American. But we've got a lot of very beautiful, diverse areas already in the country. I almost don't know why people go on vacation abroad anyways. There's so many places here. But just traveling around, getting out of your own bubble, you can see that there's that diversity and that beauty in America. But then especially if you go abroad, you can see kind of where that falls short in a lot of other countries. And that's why Hong Kong's looking to preserve their hybrid Western culture, which, as I was saying earlier, they were British owned for a century, and that very much influenced, same way we got a lot of our Western values from England. They also received those same values over that time period, and they've kind of created this hybrid. Oh, what's that there? Oh, there we go. They kind of created this hybrid culture with Western values and capitalism, along with a lot of Asian values and traditions, and that's really the American way, isn't it? Combining all the best parts of different cultures together and creating something new, and they're looking to preserve that.
So original CCC, I don't know, I put three of them in there. So diversity as a concept is not good or bad until you understand what is being diverse, right? If it is diversity of thought, where you have more ideas from which to create things, that can be good, unless the diversity of thought is someone who thinks murder is just great, right? There's a limit
Yeah.
to it. Diversity of genetics is good in the sense that if you have more of a pool of genetics, you can have a healthier and more prosperous genome, because if a disease affects part of the gene pool, it's less likely to affect all of it, right? And that's how you can survive as a species. So diversity of genetics is good. However, diversity of genetics is not made better because of more people with bad genes, right? So like someone who has a mental defect, propagating that gene on purpose, because of diversity, wouldn't be beneficial, right?
Yeah.
So
I think too. I get you going with that. I think to clarify too, I'm reading through chat here. I think to clarify what I meant by diversity is I guess bad on me for using the traditional definition of it. I didn't mean diversity in the sense of people, but I guess that was certainly a factor of it. But just diversity in landscapes. I'm in a plains area. There's a lot of farmland. I can still go to America and there's beaches and islands and waterfront and all that stuff. There's a lot of nice areas in America. I just think people need to get out and kind of get out of their
I agree.
Get out of their area.
So the way that diversity should be used is diversity inside of a what's the word when anyways, a system where the strongest, most effective is successful, right? So
kind Darwinism. Social Darwinism, and that doesn't mean let's screw over the poor people and let them go. No. We mean what's good ideas, what's effective ideas. Tacos delicious. Drug cartels not so much. So let's let tacos win. Drug cartels go by the wayside.
Yeah, that works by allowing freedom. So if you allow people to choose what places to go to, people are going to naturally pick what they see as better, right? The government should be coming in and then limiting the choices to one, because that lack of diversity, right?
Coincidence of all coincidences, we actually have this amazing economic system called capitalism that lets us put all of those ideas up on the pedestal for everybody to pick and choose, and the best one wins. It's kind of a self-selecting mechanism there, pretty ingenious.
Right. So for the free market actually includes diversity, right? But it's diversity that's created by necessity and need, right? It's not something forced. So forced diversity is bad. Diversity that is naturally occurring through social Darwinism and a free market is good. And it should not be restricted.
And it's all those things that have in common that in America they're selected by kind of the group. The entire community selects that. It's not one person coming down with a dictate saying that this is what is good and you're going to like it, even if you don't like it. You just have to do it.
Triumvirate rephrased my possibly longer than necessary argument to say, Direwolf, diversity sorted by merit and guided by morals.
That's pretty good.
I like the way you word things.
Maybe I'll swap him out for you next time.
Oh, damn it. It's going to be the Triumvirate show. I mispronounced it.
All right, so I think to wrap up this section here, we see a lot of Antifa dismantling and a lot of Hong Kong trying to preserve. And that's kind of Antifa's roots is Marxism. And Marxism, the idea of it is to let's upend the apple cart, let's flip the pyramid, let's tear it down, and then build it back up in our vision. Whereas Hong Kong, they like what they got. They got a nice capitalist democracy over there, and they'd like to preserve and keep that. It's almost a conservative ideal.
So I agree with you. Little Giant J makes an argument saying he doesn't like multiculturalism. He doesn't think it's good, and he thinks that places like Little China or Little Mexico are bad. And by that, I think he means segregated societies within society.
Yes.
So I agree that segmented society is bad because that is not a united society. However, the idea of multiculturalism, to be fair, that could be positive, isn't multiple separated cultures, but a culture that takes in things from other cultures, adapts what is good, keeps that, and does not adapt and use what is bad. So that's kind of what America, I believe, was intended to be like the melting pot, where we take in lots of little bits of other cultures, the better parts, and we adapt it and we use that because it has a benefit to society. But I totally agree with you that a segmented society of little places for China, a little place for Muslims, a little place for Mexicans, that's bad because we should be united as a nation.
Yes, very much so.
Right.
All right. Move on to the next one.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one thing. In these two scenarios that we see in these stories here, it's clear who are the authoritarians. who is using force to restrict someone's rights. So it's not the Proud Boys that are trying to stop anyone from doing any one of their human rights or their constitutional rights. It is the Black Bloc that are attacking, in most recent videos we've seen, just the most recent Portland riot, attacking kids, knocking out people and they're doing nothing to them, just standing there, attacking random strangers, attacking journalists. They are the aggressors in every case, trying to terrorize the community and reduce their rights. And
go ahead.
And in the case of Hong Kong, it is the police that are attacking the protesters. The protesters aren't going there and destroying property. They're actually letting emergency vehicles drive through. They're not attacking random people that they don't know. They're being attacked by the police. It's the authoritarians trying to crush their right to speak, and that is what's the case in both these stories. However, so it's very clear that the Black Bloc, the what should be a terrorist ruled as terrorist organization, Antifa, are the authoritarians. They're the fascists. Just like the Hong Kong police that are trying to crush these protesters, they're the fascists.
Yeah, it's interesting, these two pictures here too. You can see the helmet on the far left there. It's got the hammer and sickle on it. They're in riot gear. And if I didn't know, because I picked these pictures, so I do know. But if I didn't know, I would believe it if you told me that these pictures were the two sides of the same protest. And I would very easily guess that the guys clad in black with riot shields, that they were going after this poor girl holding a sign with a bloody eye. It'd be very easy for me to believe that these are the same protest, the two opposite sides of it.
Yeah.
All right.
And also, one last thing on this picture. I want to remind you that all the things that they are trying to preserve here, if China takes over Hong Kong and uses the same exact rules and laws that they have throughout the rest of China. China currently has that social credit system right now, where not only do they have all those oppressive laws, but if you're someone who's speaking out against them, if you're one of these, basically any one of these protesters,
yeah, you've become unpersoned.
You are unpersoned. You can't do business. You can't travel. You are unable to live your life. You have zero freedoms, even less freedoms than the average Chinese person who already doesn't have any freedom.
I don't know if you knew this, Dyer, but one of the factors in that social credit system is it is weighted by also the people that you associate with. So if you have friends that have low scores, it'll lower your score too. So these people will not only start off with a low score and not be able to interact with society at large, they'll be necessarily shunned from the rest of society because people with good standing won't want to interact with them. They will have to segregate them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here's the next page.
So we just did what do they want? And we can see here in these two pictures the two protests, which flags that they are flying. Dyer, do you want to guess which side's which on this one?
So if I didn't know better, I'd say, the Americans must be waving the American flags, right? But nope, Those are the Hong Kong people, the people from Hong Kong, waving our American flag because they want our freedoms, they love our way of life, and they don't want to be in an oppressive communist country. But who's on the left?
That would mean that there's Americans, quote unquote, flying hammer and sickle flags?
Yes, people who live a privileged life under a capitalistic, constitutional republic, with all these freedoms, and they're saying we want to not have freedoms. We want to not have a private property. We like to not be able to determine what we do with our lives. We want Big Brother to control everything and have the right to kill us if we ever disagree. That is just genius.
That sounds like real safety to me.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what the words say. So we just did what were they asking for? Let's do how are they asking for it? So what are they doing to accomplish those goals that they just set out? So yeah, you can go ahead and read the Antifa one again, Dyer.
Antifa is a relatively smaller street protest, hundreds, and representing typically wealthy, white, and non-working class people.
People don't got calluses on their hands. The
basically.
Hong Kong protests, by contrast, are mass street protests with estimates in the hundreds of thousands. To a few of the days, they had millions of people. And Hong Kong as a city, I believe, has approximately 7 to 10 million people in the city. And some of these protests, they were estimating that they had over a million people out on the streets. So this is representing every part of their society. Everybody's being represented. Whereas the Antifa one is not very represented, which is ironic because they're supposedly looking for a more diverse society, yet their ranks are very undiverse.
Yeah, they are a very loud, brainwashed minority who have never once opened a history book. Who only they so communism survives in indoctrination and limiting of information. It's the same thing in China and with Antifa. These people grew up in schools where they were taught one way of thinking and were never presented with any information to counter it, right? Except for an argument against any possible other argument with no actually challenging of their ideas.
Yeah,
Well,
it would have to have ignorance so that you didn't understand what the history of it was. You'd have to have some arrogance to think that you're more right than other people, and then just kind of a lack of
you
awareness
might even
of
call it a
what
bit
it
of
is.
a religious zealotry, actually.
That's weird. It'd be cool if somebody did a video on that someday.
Yeah, someone should do a video on that. And then Hong Kong, sorry, not Hong Kong, China does the same thing to their populace. They limit the information that's available to them, and their entire school system is indoctrination into the state's way of thinking, right? Controlling what they believe through what they are allowed to know. So and that's how they maintain people who support communism.
Yes.
Ignorance and indoctrination. It's funny though, in places that are allowed to have freedom of thought and they're allowed to know about the history of other countries and how economic systems have worked. People who have broader educations. They tend to go capitalist because there's so much evidence that capitalism actually is a functioning economic system, whereas socialism and communism are not.
Yes. Well, it's the one thing that they're very good at producing is bodies and bodies and bodies. I believe the statistics on how many bodies there were during the 1900s due to communism and socialism is just in the
60
millions.
million.
60 million. Yeah, it's staggering.
Yeah.
We talk about some of the other big players who got through quite a few people. You got Stalin, Hitler, but they really didn't hold a candle to Mao.
Yeah.
And some of those other places.
Yeah, they still haven't figured out how to monetize dead bodies yet. The only people who've managed to do that are Planned Parenthood.
Da-dun-cha.
So Antifa also does no strikes for the unemployed.
Yes.
They have attempted to shut down parts of cities by blocking roads. So they don't quit doing their job because they don't have them, but they try to stop other people from doing their jobs.
Yes. Whereas Hong Kong, it's a very massively strong economic engine of that area of the world. Very, very, very valuable area. And they've been doing some pretty large-scale mass general strikes across the city the last few weeks. Last week, they brought the Hong Kong International Airport to a complete standstill, which massively, massively disrupted the region. And that just goes to show, from a capitalist perspective, it kind of hurts my heart. All right, let's get back to work, guys. We got money to be made, but it is their city. It is their lives at stake, and they have the ability to rattle the entire world economy just by making a decision that we're going to stop this airport. And it is their airport to stop. If the international community is not willing to step in to keep these people safe, because there will be, if China gets their way, people will die. That is not even hyperbole at all. It is absolutely their right to throw their body onto those gears and make the machine stop to get people to pay attention. Because if let's say that this is all good, this all works out for them, and China doesn't pop in now, they are still their deal with China leaving them alone is still going to expire in 28 years. And that's why these protests have continued on, is because they don't want to wait 28 years. They want a solution now. They want a permanent solution now, because a lot of them are obviously still going to be alive. People that are, in that 2030 demographic, they're still going to be alive in 28 years, and they're looking to have kids, and they don't want a world. They don't want to. They don't bring kids into a world where they know China's going to come in and potentially kill a lot of them. And so I say more power to them if they can stop their economy to get the world to listen to them and see what's going on over there to get people's attention. That is their right to do that.
Plus, China still has that one child policy, right? So if you have multiple
Yes.
kids, you're going to get taxed to an exorbitant amount just to have that child, to the point where it would be more economically feasible to kill the child. Otherwise, you'll all starve. It's pretty.
What an amazing modern society! Wow.
Yeah, isn't it? Shadow Wolf 87 wanted to point out that whereas with the Antifa protests, they destroy private property and cars and businesses and sometimes loot. There is no looting or general destruction of private property in the Hong Kong riots. Or
Yeah, that's that'll be our fourth point that we can break that down a little bit.
So number three, the Antifa are waving Soviet-style hammer and sickle flags to show the world who they look up to and want to emulate.
Whereas the Hong Kong protesters are waving American flags to show the world who they look up to and who they want to emulate.
Yeah,
that's pretty powerful. That gives me chills thinking about that.
Well, so as much as we're told all the time that America is hated, I know for a fact it's not true that we're hated all around the world. We are hated by the right people that you'd want to hate you. That's
hated by the bad guys, right?
Yeah. I am very happy by some of the enemies we have. It makes me happy that Iran hates us. It makes me happy that China hates us. It makes me happy that Russia hates us, because those are not good actors. Those are people who abuse their people, and we don't want to be like them. But there's people that love freedom and peace around the world that want to be more like us, who want prosperity over tyranny. And those are our allies, and those are the allies we should be courting, not just trying to be everyone's friend.
Yeah. And it's I heard I saw an interesting tweet over the weekend. Somebody was commenting on the Portland Antifa protests. Well, Portland Antifa riots. I'll go ahead and say that. And they're contrasting that with Hong Kong flying American flags, and they said, "Be the America they think that we are." I thought that was a really good. That was a pretty good quote. Because being here, I think we're pretty great. I think that we got a lot to live up to. But looking at what some of these other people think that we are, looking at how they think of us, that gives me some hope that there's still, we are still a good society worth preserving. It kind of gets me re-energized and reminds me of what it is that we're looking to preserve, because it's not just for us. We are obviously, as evidenced by this group of people who are about to be oppressed, they are flying the American flag because we are that beacon of hope, freedom, and democracy. And that being reminded of that, being able to see yourself through what somebody else sees, that's pretty powerful. And I like the way that they think of us, and I'd like for us to continue living up to that ideal.
So I visited my wife's country in Asia, and the people in her community, and she, before having her hopes and dreams crushed, thought that all Americans were a warrior race of guardian angels that interceded around the world to protect freedom and save people. Kind of like international heroes. Kind of imagine the World Police, whatever that puppet movie was.
Yeah,
it's kind of a ridiculous high standard they saw of us, and that also had a high, thought we were all wealthy and we were all intelligent, because that's this fantasy they have of all Americans. But still, even after finding, it's Team America, World Police. But even after coming to America, she's like, still, this is the best place. Because of the quality of life, the freedoms that we have here, we enjoy. And that, yes, people in America do a lot of good around the world. There's I brag about this all the time, but there's a Navy ship that is a hospital that just goes from country to country in a regular rotation, mostly poorer countries, and just goes there, has a fleet week where people who are in that community that need medical care can go on the ship and get free medical care via the U.S. military. And while that's happening, many of the sailors go out and just spend loads of money in these communities where their money is worth like 10,000 to 1, right?
That'd be that'd be a great story for CNN to embed a journalist with. I think I'd be.
Like, and I wouldn't
That'd
have,
certainly be something worth discussing and spreading around and let people know that we do that.
I wouldn't have known about it if my wife hadn't told me. The Navy hasn't even told me that. You would think they would brag about that. So, yeah, there's a lot to be proud of, and we do have a lot of friends around the world. The last part was Antifa vandalized private businesses of people in their community. Sometimes, in the case of BLM, burned it down.
Yeah, utter destruction. Hong Kong, the protests have remained relative, given the volume of people that are there, they've remained relatively peaceful. There has been some vandalism. It has all been in government buildings, from what I have read. Breaking some windows, spray painting, and that was after, I believe, the Hong Kong government decided they were not going to listen to the protesters and had locked them out of the building. And they decided they wanted in. It's their government. We've got the right to peaceably assemble. I don't know if that would have necessarily fallen under peaceable assembly, but nobody's perfect. In general, though, they've been rather tame and peaceful, and not been going after random people, not after random windows, not after kicking these the city garbage cans down the street. It's not pointless destruction. It is at least targeted. I do got to call out. Let's no violence anywhere. Let's not destroy property. But we're also not under the same kind of threat that they are under. So I kind of gotta feel for that a little bit.
I think that there's only really one hope for the people of Hong Kong, and this is why. I don't think that any country wants to go to war with China over Hong Kong, right? No one wants another world war. So nope. Nor does China want a war. They'll do everything short of war, but we do have economic leverage over them, and they're appealing to us. They're appealing to the global community at the right time and to the right people. Their only hope is that during these negotiations, economic negotiations with Trump and China, where they have someone who is that is more inclined to hearing their calls for support, it's more likely that with Trump crushing the Chinese economy right now with all these tariffs, that we have the most leverage on them right now, and where we could actually include this as part of the negotiations, an extension or protections of their rights, something as a bargaining chip for China to give up.
I would love to see that, and I'm very sad to report that Trump is actually doing the opposite right now. This kind of falls into, we aren't always rah Trump. We'll call him out when he does something wrong. And over the last few weeks, we've actually had an announcement of several of the tariffs being rescinded and bouncing them back. So right at the point when presumably we should be turning up the economic heat on them and focusing on Hong Kong and saying, all right, you guys need to let's figure out something with Hong Kong, or these sanctions, we're going to keep turning up the heat on them. At the time that should be happening, we're actually turning the heat back down on them, and they put in a lot of they've removed the tariffs on a lot of consumer goods kind of in preparation for the holiday season. But I certainly think that Hong Kong's a little bit more important than getting a good deal on an Xbox this Christmas.
Yeah, I agree. But I know the process is not over. This is one step in this negotiation. I think he's taking the wrong step, but I hope he hears their voices, voices like ours saying, hey, stay strong on China, because you don't want to start another trade war later on over this issue only. No one would be okay with that, right? But while you're already in a trade war with them, you're already pushing pressure on them, might as well capitalize on saving these millions of people who want freedom. Make it worth it.
Thank you, Laser Unicorn 777, who just gave us a nice follow.
Thank you very much. Also, while we're on the topic of following and also raffles and giveaways, I know it's a terrible segue, but I'm going to go with it anyways. So I just got in these wonderful mouse pads, and we have one mouse pad still remaining. So every $2 donation is...
It's a mouse pad, huh?
This is absolutely a mouse pad, 3D ergonomic mouse pad that is definitely for supporting your wrist and nothing else.
Well, you might get a wrist injury with that one. I don't know.
Just to convince you further, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Zooming in on the important part. See, this part here is what supports your wrist. This is what part that supports your wrist, so you don't get any wrist injuries while you're working on the computer. Yes. Thank you very much, Ruka, for the lemon.
She gave 2 lemons, presumably because that there are 2 things that she would like to rest her wrist on.
3 lemons. Just for good measure.
Yeah, there you go. I thought I was watching Dire. LGJ.
But yes, that is what we're currently raffling off.
Yeah, I know, LGJ. We can have a little fun too. We also keep it we'll keep it clean though. All right. Yeah. So if you would like to hop in the raffle, hop on to Streamlabs and toss us a few bucks, and we'll get you in that raffle.
There is a link below. Any case, next screen.
Yep.
This picture says 1,000 words.
Yes, it does.
So look how polite they are. Sorry for the inconvenience. We are fighting for the future of our home. And this guy, if I remember correctly, was doing absolutely nothing when he got hit in the head. And look at that. Was it a crowbar that hit him in the head?
I can't remember. It was certainly something blunt that had no reason to be flying through the air. I do know that. Yeah. So we just did the last 2 slides were what are they asking for, and then how are they asking for it, and then this one is I can't remember. So Dyer's gonna have to advance the slide so I can see it.
Who are they fighting against? Andy Fogg.
Who are they fighting against?
He's fighting against fascists, so they claim. They define it as people they disagree with, though, so that's not really the traditional definition of a fascist.
Whereas Hong Kong is also fighting fascists, defined as authoritarian collectivists.
Dave Youngson just sent us 243. Thank you very much, Dave Youngson. I'm giving you your ticket.
Thank you. So who's included in Antifa's definition of fascism here?
It includes actual white identitarians. So
all 17 of them?
All 17 of them, who are also anti-democracy socialists, much like them, as well as that's against civilian bystanders, people who opinions they know nothing about, who just might be walking by, living their lives. You're a white person. You must be knocked out and bloodied because you are a fascist for existing near us. They're also on-the-ground journalists, because if you are expressing your First Amendment right to cover the news, then you are also a fascist because you're part of the machine. Actually, they don't like journalists because they want to commit crimes. They want to beat people up. They're just inherently evil, angry people who want to commit acts of violence and are using their ideology as a justification for it. And the journalists will out them and get them in trouble, so they have to beat up the journalists to avoid them outing them.
Yes, as we saw last month, Andy No was very brutally attacked by multiple people. Left bloody. Is left with some brain injuries that, from my understanding, are relatively permanent. He's going to have some after effects from that for the rest of his life, which that's pretty aggressive to be beating up journalists to the point that they have permanent after effects from it.
Does that sound like a fascist thing to do? To shut down?
It sounds fascist, but they said they're anti-fascist. It's almost like it's almost like they're not doing what they said that they're going to be doing.
But it's like the
Weird.
Nazis were fascists, right? And they shut down all news that didn't expressly work for the government,
And they
right?
didn't need a permit to storm Normandy, the anti-fascists back then, did they? That's
No, no, they didn't.
uh,
They also
well,
against law enforcement, who often allow Antifa to riot illegally in certain states. Yes, like in
in Portland, they
yeah,
certainly allow them to go pretty far. They've gone pretty far in a lot of leftist strongholds, and you know, to law enforcement's defense, obviously, pro blue guys here, but they got to follow orders, and if the mayor is going to say, "Hey, you guys can't do anything about it," there's not a lot that they can do about it. And even when they're being very light-handed with Antifa still attacking them. Still thinking that they're all murderers, that they're just looking for little black kids to gun down, and the officers are just there like trying to keep everybody safe.
yeah, and those really privileged little white kids who are yelling at the black police officer, calling him a race traitor and calling him racial epithets. That's seems really telling to me as well.
Yeah, it seems pretty not racist, right? I mean, to be just haranguing a black guy for his race, that
Yeah,
seems right. Huh. All
weird.
right, so Hong Kong again, their definition of fascist is more traditional. It's authoritarian collectivists, and those include the Dirty Reds, also known as the Chinese, but I prefer Dirty Reds, who have killed thousands of student democracy advocates in the Tiananmen Square massacre. So like they've got a very deep and bloody history of going after the type of protesters that are in Hong Kong right now. And the Tiananmen Square is just kind of the best known, but that's kind of just the very tip of their body count for going after people who don't agree with what they agree with. They're also going after Dirty Red sympathizers, and that includes many of their own government officials and the international companies and organizations that are being influenced by Beijing. That was kind of one of the main things that kind of kicked this all off was their city leader was trying to get through a bill that was very favored by Beijing and would have allowed Beijing to criminalize and extradite Hong Kong citizens for things that were illegal in China. And the only reason why she would do that is if she was in the pocket of Beijing, and so they're not happy with that, and they want to get those kind of people out of their government. And then, as I was saying earlier, China just bought a ton of ads across a lot of different social media sites, looking to propagandize the rest of the world, because obviously their citizens can't see it. To propagandize the rest of the world against the Hong Kong protesters, and big tech is just letting that happen. They're not worried about that at all. They're very happy to accept those Chinese wands. Is it wands? And show that propaganda all over social media. Definitely not fake news.
One moment. Thank you very much, Acts of Truth, for following and also for the Ninja Guinea. Much appreciated.
Ooh, that's very nice. Ninja Guinea. How many tickets is that?
I actually, so I don't know, but I think we should start making a hundred, a diamond be one ticket, a Ninja Guinea be two, and Ninjet be, I guess that'd be what 20.
Yeah, we'll have to do a price check on that. Let's call it 3 tickets for tonight, just because we really like those Ninja Guineas.
Yeah.
And we'll get you guys a better price check next week.
Yep.
And then the last group of people that are counting as fascists are their own law enforcement. And the law enforcement there is not like the law enforcement here. The law enforcement in Hong Kong, very much state controlled, and they're taking their orders right now from the Hong Kong government, which is, again, as I just said, widely believed to be kind of in the pocket of Beijing. And there's some discussion about whether or not some of the law enforcement is being infiltrated by China or being directed by China. Yeah, there's some conspiracy theories I don't necessarily want to get into about China kind of doing some false flag operations over there. But just in general, they're trying to not get beat up and shot in the face by their police for trying to preserve their own freedoms, which that sounds pretty anti-fascist to me.
Yeah, it sounds like the real anti-fascists are the Hong Kong protesters.
What would that make Antifa then?
Fascist, actually. So,
Wow.
and people keep pointing out to me, it's pretty funny actually. Well, they can't be fascist. It's in the name. They're anti-fascist, so they're not fascist. Duh. Yeah, just like the what was it, the National Socialist Party? Were they just National Socialists?
Yes.
Or what about the it was the Democratic DPK, Democratic People's. Oh, Timberwolf gave us $10.
Well, thank you very much, Timberwolf.
DPK, Democratic Party.
Yeah,
of
Democratic Peoples of Korea. Yeah,
Republic of Korea. Yeah.
very very democratic over there.
They're not democratic. They're not a republic.
Oh, they're not, but it's in the name.
Yeah. So
get the Federal Reserve Bank, which is neither federal, has no reserves, and isn't technically a bank.
Right. So just because you have a name, it doesn't mean that is what you actually do. Right. You realize that a name is not the entirety of a thing.
It's almost like your actions speak louder than your words.
Actually, and you know what? A common thing is to mislabel something to obscure what it actually is.
I believe that was called double speak. Orwell would be proud of these people.
Yeah. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they call themselves anti-fascist as a ruse to protect the fact that they are actually being very fascist. Because you know what? That's what communism is. It's a fascist ideology. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that socialism and communism necessitate a need for a authoritarian leader. That it is required for those economic systems to exist. So they're inherently fascist.
How else are you gonna take other people's stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So there you
go. These are both very topical protests going on. Hong Kong's going on right now. Antifa just happened in Portland. I'm sure it's going to happen again relatively soon. They usually do something about once a month. That seems to be about the time it takes them to recover from getting out of their parents' basement for a few days. I think as much as we talk about Antifa and what they're doing, kind of get a little numb to hearing about what they do all the time, and then the media kind of makes up stuff about what they're really doing. I think this comparison between Antifa and people actually fighting against an authoritarian regime, comparing what those two look like against each other really shines a light on what it is that Antifa is. And at the same time, raises awareness of what's going on in Hong Kong. Certainly, that needs to be discussed more and more every day, because I think that I really think that the populace, the American people, rising up with it sounds kind of cliche, but rising up with tweets, but just the public sentiment of American people saying, "Hey, we would like our government to do something about Hong Kong." I think that would be kind of their best hope. So. Spread the word about that and keep your awareness up.
I would gladly trade our Black Bloc protesters for our Antifa for their Antifa, basically. Right? Hey, they're both anti-fascist. Why don't we just make a trade? I think it would be better for the world, because those communist Antifa protesters in our country would be going to the communist, dream they've always wanted. They'll be going over to a communist country, and it'll be just everything they dreamed it was. And all these people who want freedom and want to have a way of life like ours, they'd be getting it. So I would love to make that trade.
We got a little bit of a issue with illegal immigration every now and then, but I certainly think that we would be capable of absorbing 7 to 10 million people who are out there waving flags, want freedom of speech, love capitalism. I think we would find a place for them. Plus, I really do.
Just knowing Hong Kong, the vast majority of these people are educated and have job skills that would be beneficial to our country. It's Hong Kong.
Exactly.
So it's not like we don't already have a bunch of Chinese culture around America. We have Chinatown everywhere, Chinese or Asian food stores everywhere. So they'll find a home.
The only the only downside would be those royal crownophiles who just love talking about the queen. They're still all about that. And I just I'm not about the queen. We seceded from that. We don't need that stuff. So maybe they're not. Not everybody's perfect, but I think we'd find a place for them.
I think Alpha B is here to tell me that our time is up. Is that right here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be there shortly, honey. I'm sorry. But I just want to talk about that gun law that you brought up about that you heard about in Texas. How we're not actually gonna have a purge, and then
the Great Cowboy Purge.
The Great Cowboy Purge. Can we go over that real quick? Yeah. Okay. We're gonna do this last story, and then I gotta go. Otherwise, my wife might kill me.
Everybody give Alpha B a shout out in chat though, so that she knows we appreciate her letting Dyer stay.
Appreciate you letting me stay. They all want to see and hear from you again. They haven't heard you sing in forever. No. Love you, babe. All right. So, just a quick update. Alpha B actually brought me this story. The funny thing is, she came in and said that she heard that Texas was going to be like the Purge, and I'm like, wow, that is a big selling point on this story. It's gonna be hard to live up to that sales pitch. So basically, she had heard on the news about these new gun laws that Texas was going to be passing, or already has passed some of them, but one of them that's passing in September 1st that was being advertised as being is going to be everyone in Texas was going to have concealed and open carry guns, no restrictions, and it was going to be like the Purge. So I'm like, I go and actually investigate what they're really talking about, because it can't actually be that. So the news she was watching was actually talking about a law that in Texas on 1 September, if a county were to declare an emergency, like in Houston when there was the floods and fire and police protection is limited or non-existent altogether, in those kinds of scenarios, people who have guns can open carry and conceal carry. That's all.
Sounds like the Purge to me.
Yeah, it wasn't that every Texan's gonna have a gun on him all the time. It's just that when you can't have the police there to protect you, there's even less assumption that they can protect you. That you should be able to have your own gun to protect your property, and often it's stores that get looted during those kinds of situations. So that's all. Not a big deal. A couple other laws that with the recent mass shootings in El Paso and was it Ohio?
Yeah.
A lot of places, a lot of states are talking about increasing and making new gun laws, whereas Texas has actually in recent months reduced restrictions on a lot of things. And here's some of the other things they also reduced restrictions on. They made it so if you have a foster home, that before the law said in Texas that you had to have your gun and your bullets stored separately. Now they said you can store them together in the same like weapons safe, following all the normal gun safety storage laws, which makes sense because if you have someone breaking into your house, you'd want to have the bullets with the gun, right? So you can
that could be dangerous for the burglar, though.
Right, you might end up with more shot burglars, but less dead foster kids. No.
Oh, gotcha. No. All right, that's a steep trade-off, though. I don't know.
I know they had to make a tough call. And Texas says we're going to take. We'd rather have more dead home invaders and less dead foster children.
So, what did that debate on the floor look like? The Republicans said, "Think of the children." The Democrats said, "Think of the burglars."
I guess. I mean,
okay.
They have always been on the side of the lawbreakers.
Yes.
Now, another law that was passed was so it was no longer against the law to conceal carry in churches as long as the church had not made an explicit written or verbal instructions for you to not have a gun in the establishment. So Before, it was against the law. Even if the church had not told you not to have a gun, if you had a gun on you, it still was against the law. They took that away. And then they also had a law that was recently passed that allowed the storage of a gun in locked cars in parking lots of both schools and universities. This law, though not a bad thing, I agree with it. It seems like it doesn't really solve a lot of problems other than allows you to have your freedoms. Because if there's a school shooting, usually you're not at your car.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not going to do anything to stop school shootings, but it allows you to have your gun in your car. So if you travel anywhere, if you're traveling on your way to school or from school, you at least can have your constitutional right to defend yourself there. But this doesn't do anything for school shootings. But overall, it's positive, I guess. Then the last one that was a recent law in Texas that has been proposed but not passed yet would prevent landlords from restricting their tenants from possessing guns. Because right now, in some states and in Texas as well, a landlord could put a provision in their contract saying no guns on the premises, which means a private person can limit another private person's right to self-defense with a firearm.
I'm sure that's exactly what the Founding Fathers imagined when they wrote the Second Amendment.
I highly doubt it.
Oh, I was wrong. Damn it.
Damn it. So those are all good laws.
Yeah, we're all talking about common sense gun control. I think those sound like pretty common sense control of guns. I mean, you got the first one. If for some reason a state of emergency reverts, civil services back to, I don't know, kind of something similar to what it might have been in the 1700s, where you don't got police cars that are able to respond in 2 seconds. You can use your own weapon to defend yourself. That makes sense. Defending your family, your foster kids. That sounds like pretty much what they would have imagined. The third one, being able to carry in churches, protecting your First Amendment. To respect the establishment of religion. That's kind of what the Second Amendment was meant to do, was to protect the other amendments, right? And then the allowing your storage of a gun at a university. I think that goes along with protecting your freedom of speech as well. And then preventing, landlords. It's obviously, if you're going to have it in your rented house, you're probably defending some of your property you got there, and that kind of goes along with all that stuff. That all sounds very common sense to me.
Yeah. I'm surprised those were laws at all in Texas in the first place. So, yeah, that's what it was about. So if you see any news about, there's going to be a purge in Texas on September 1st, that's fake news. Don't worry about it.
Real quick, though, before you drop this off, I do want to relate this to the previous discussion about Hong Kong. One of the things that they don't have over there in Hong Kong that probably would help them to a certain extent is they don't got the Second Amendment. And so they don't really have any kind of safety measure if the government decides that they want to come in and strip them down of all their freedoms. If we were in a similar situation where overnight an authoritarian regime would pop in and say, okay, you don't have any more rights, they would have a real hard time enforcing that. Because we have a couple boomsticks that would say otherwise. They do not in Hong Kong, and they are very, very susceptible to just China saying, "All right, we've had enough of this experiment, and here come the tanks."
Yep. Anyways, thank you guys very much for joining us on the show. Thank you very much, Foxlot. That was some good topics. Thank you for all the donations, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, for the game stream. Please join us for some Quiplash. It's always fun. So it'll be starting at the same time as the show started this time, which was 9:30 CST. We'll see you guys all then. Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun.
Yep, great time. All right, see you guys tomorrow.
Tirewolf out.
Trevize out. Mouse pads.
Mouse pads.